After takeoff, the ship routinely monitored the condition of the 60 people sleeping in its cryonic tanks. One malfunction showed, that of Person 9. His EEG activity revealed brain was being used. The complex homeostatic devices locked in circuit feed, and the ship contacted Person 9. "You are slightly awake," the ship said, utilizing its psychotronic route. There was no point in rousing 9 to full consciousness. After all, the flight would last an entire decade. Virtually unconscious, but unfortunately still able to think, Person 9 thought, "Someone is addressing me." And he said, "Where am I located? I don't see anything." "You're in faulty cryonic suspension," the man said, "and I shouldn't be able to hear you." "Faulty," I said. "That's the point. You can hear me. Do you know your name?" "Victor Kimmings. Bring me out of this. We are in flight." "Then put me under." "Just a moment." The ship examined the cryonic mechanisms. It scanned and surveyed, and then it said, "I will try." And time passed. Victor Kimmings, unable to see anything, unaware of his body, found himself still conscious. "Lower my temperature," he said. He could not hear his voice. Perhaps he only imagined he spoke. Colors floated toward him and then rushed at him. He liked the colors. They reminded him of a childhood paint box, a semi-animated kind, an artificial life form. He had used them in school 200 years ago. "I can't put you under," the voice of the ship sounded inside Kimming's head. "The malfunction is too elaborate. I can't correct it and I can't repair it. You will be conscious for 10 years. The semi-animated colors rushed toward him. Now they possessed a sinister quality, supplied to them by his own fear. Oh my God. 10 years, and the colors darkened. As Victor Kimmings lay paralyzed, surrounded by dismal flickerings of light, the ship explained to him its strategy. The strategy did not represent a decision on its part. The ship had been programmed to seek the solution in case of malfunction of its sort. "What I will do is feed you sensory simulation. The peril to you is sensory deprivation, you see. If you are conscious for 10 years without sensory data, your mind will deteriorate. When we reach the LR4 system, you will be a vegetable." "Well, what do you intend to feed me? What do you have in your information storage banks? All the video soap operas of the last century? Wake me up and I'll just walk around." "There's no air in me. Nothing for you to eat, no one to talk to, since everyone else is under." And Kimming said, "I can talk to you. We can play chess." "Not for 10 years. Listen to me. I have no food and no air. You must remain as you are. But one forced upon us, this compromise, you see. You are talking to me now. I have no particular information stored. Here is policy in these situations. I will feed you your own buried memories, emphasizing the pleasant ones. You possess 206 years of memories, and most of them have sunk down into your unconscious. This is a splendid source of sensory data for you to receive. Be of good cheer. The situation you are in is not unique. It has never happened within a domain before, but I am programmed to deal with it. Relax and trust me. I will see that you are provided with a world." "You should have warned me before I agreed to immigrate." "Relax." And he relaxed, but he was terribly frightened. Theoretically, he should have gone under, into the successful cryonic suspension, then awakened a moment later at his star of destination, or rather the planet, the colony planet of that star. Everyone else aboard the ship lay in an unknowing state. He was the exception, as if bad karma had attacked him for obscure reasons. And worst of all, he had to depend totally on the goodwill of the ship. Suppose it elected to feed him monsters. The ship could terrorize him for 10 years. 10 objective years, and undoubtedly more from a subjective standpoint. He was, in effect, totally in the ship's power. Did interstellar ships enjoy such a situation? He knew little about interstellar ships. His field was microbiology. Let me think. My first wife, Martine. The one who wore jeans and a red shirt open at the waist and cooked delicious crepes. I hear. So be it. The colors resolved themselves into a coherent stable of shapes. A building, a little old yellow wooden house that he had owned when he was 19 years old in Wyoming. Wait, the foundation was bad. It was on a mud sill and the roof leaked. But he saw the kitchen with the table he had built himself, and he felt glad. You will not know after a little while that I am feeding you your buried memories. I haven't thought of that house in a century. He made out his old electric drip coffee pot, the box of paper filters beside it. This is the house where Martine and I lived, he realized. Martine! I'm on the phone, Martine said from the living room. The ship said, I will cut in only when there is an emergency. I will be monitoring you, however, to be sure you're in a satisfactory state. Do not be afraid. Turn down the rear right burner of the stove, Martine said. He could hear her, yet not see her yet. He made his way from the kitchen to the dining room and to the living room. At the VF, Martine stood in rapt conversation with her brother. She wore shorts and she was barefoot. Through the front windows of the living room, he could see the street. A commercial vehicle was trying to park without success. It's a warm day. Should turn on the air conditioning. He seated himself on the old sofa as Martine continued her VF conversation, and he found himself gazing at his most cherished possessions. A framed poster on the wall above Martine, Gilbert Shelton's Freddy Says, drawn in which Freddy Freak sits with his cat on his lap. Fat Freddy is trying to say speed kills, but he's so wired on speed he holds in his hands every kind of amphetamine tablet, pill, spansul, capsule that exists. And he can't say it. The cat is gritting his teeth and wincing in a mixture of dismay and disgust. Terrence gave it to him. Martine, as a wedding present. It's worth thousands. It was signed by the artist back in the 1980s, long before either Victor Kimmings or Martine lived. If we ever run out of money, we could sell the poster. It was not a poster, it was the poster. Martine adored it. The fabulous furry freak brothers, in the golden age of long ago society. No wonder he loved Martine so. She herself loved back, loved the beauties of the world, and treasured and cherished them as she treasured and cherished him. It was a protective love that nourished but did not strife. It had been her idea to frame the poster. He would have tacked it up on the wall, so stupid was he. Hi, what are you thinking? I think. Are you ready for dinner? Open some red wine, a Cabernet. Will an 07 do? He said, standing up. He felt then like taking hold of his wife and hugging her. Either an 07 or a 12. She trotted past him through the dining room into the kitchen. And going down into the cellar, he began to search among the bottles, which of course lay flat. Musty air and dampness. He liked the smell of the cellar. But then he noticed the redwood planks lying half burned in the dirt, and he thought, I know I've got to get a concrete slab poured. He forgot about the wine and went over to the far corner, where the dirt was piled highest, bending down. He poked at a board. He poked with a trowel, then he thought, where did I get this trowel? I didn't have it a minute ago. The board crumbled against the trowel. Oh. The whole house was collapsing, he realized. For Christ's sake, I better tell Martine. Going back upstairs, the wine forgotten, he started to say that the foundation of the house was dangerously decayed, but Martine was nowhere in sight. Nothing cooked on the stove. No pots, no pans. Amazed, he put his hands on the stove and found it cold. Wasn't she just cooking? "Martine!" No response. Except for himself, the house was empty. Empty and collapsing. He seated himself on the kitchen table and felt the chair give slightly under him. Did not give much, but he felt it. He felt the sagging. Where did she go? He returned to the living room. Maybe she went next door to borrow some spices or butter or something. Nonetheless, panic now filled him. He looked at the poster. It was unframed, and the edges had been torn. I know she framed it. He ran across the room to it, to examine it closely. Faded. The artist's signature had faded. He could scarcely make it out. He insisted on framing it under glare-free, reflection-free glass. But it isn't framed. It's torn. The most precious thing we own. Suddenly, he found himself crying. It amazed him, his tears. Martine is gone. The poster is deteriorated. The house is crumbling away. And nothing is cooking on the stove. This is terrible. And I don't understand any of it. But the ship understood it. The ship had been carefully monitoring Victor Kemming's brainwave patterns, and the ship knew that something had gone wrong. The waveforms showed agitation and pain. I must get him out of this feed circuit. Where does the flaw lie? Worry dormant in the man, underlying anxieties. Perhaps if I intensify the signal, I will use the same source, but amp up the charge. What has happened is that massive subliminal insecurities have taken possession of him. The fault is not mine, but lies instead in his psychological makeup. I will try an earlier period in his life, before the neurotic anxieties got laid down. In the backyard, Victor scrutinized a bee. It had gotten itself trapped in a spider's web. The spider wound up the bee with great care. That's wrong, Victor thought. I'll let the bee loose. Reaching up, he took hold of the encapsulated bee, drew it from the web, and scrutinizing it carefully, began to unwrap it. The bee stung him. It felt like a little patch of flame. Why did it sting me, he wondered. I was letting it go. He went indoors to his mother and told her, but she did not listen. She was watching television, and his finger hurt where the bee had stung it, but most importantly, he did not understand why the bee would attack its rescuer. Put some Bactine on it, his mom said, roused from watching TV. He had begun to cry. It was unfair, it made no sense. He was perplexed and dismayed, and he felt a hatred towards small living things because they were dumb. He didn't have any sense. He left the house, played for a time on a swing, a slide, a sandbox. Then he went into the garage because he heard a strange flapping, whirring sound, like a kind of fan. And inside the gloomy garage, he found that a bird was fluttering against the cobwebbed rear window, trying to get out. Below it, the cat, Dorky, leaped and leaped, trying to reach the bird. He picked up the cat. The cat extended its body and its front legs, extended its jaws and bit into the bird. At once the cat scrambled down, ran off from the still fluttering bird, and Victor ran into the house. He told his mother that the Durkee had caught a bird. That goddamn cat! His mother took the broom from the closet in the kitchen and ran outside trying to find Dorky. The cat had concealed itself under the bramble bushes. She could not reach it with the broom. I'm getting rid of that cat! Victor did not tell her that he had arranged for the cat to catch the bird. He watched in silence as his mother tried to pry Dorky out from her hiding place. Dorky was crunching up the bird. He could hear the sound of bones breaking, small bones. He felt a strange feeling, as if he should tell his mother what he had done. Yet if he told her, she would punish him. He said to himself he wouldn't do that again. His face, he realized, turned red. What if this mother figured out? What if she had some secret way of knowing? Dorky couldn't tell her. The bird was dead. No one would ever know. He was safe. But he felt bad. And that night, he could not eat his dinner. Both his parents noticed. They thought he was sick. They took his temperature. He said nothing about what he had done. His mother told his father about Dorky, and they decided to get rid of Dorky. Seated at the table, listening, Victor began to cry. "All right. We won't get rid of her. It's natural for a cat to catch a bird." The next day, he sat playing in the sandbox. Some plants grew up in the sand. He broke them off. Later, his mother told him that they had been a wrong thing to do. Alone in the backyard in his sandbox, he sat with a pail of water, forming a small amount of wet sand. The sky, which had been blue and clear, became by degrees overcast. The shadow passed over him, and he looked up. He sensed a presence around him, something vast that could think. "You are responsible for the death of the bird." He said he knew. He wished then that he could die. That he could replace the bird and die for it. Leaving it had been, fluttering against the cobweb window in the garage. The bird wanted to fly and eat and live. "You must never do that again," the presence told him. He said he was sorry, and he began to weep. "This is a very neurotic person," the ship realized. "I'm having an awful lot of trouble finding any happy memories. There's too much fear in him, too much guilt. He's buried it all, and yet it's still there, worrying him like a dog worrying a rag. Where can I go in his memories to find him solace? I must come up with 10 years of memories, or his mind will be lost." Perhaps, the ships thought, the error that I am making is in the area of choice on my part. I should allow him to select his own memories. However, the ship realized this will allow him an element of fantasy, and that's not usually good. I will try the segment dealing with the first marriage once again. Perhaps this time, if I keep the intensity of the memories at a greater level, the entropic factor can be abolished. What happened was a subtle variation for the remembered world. Decay of structure. I will compensate for that. So be it. Do you suppose Gilbert Shelton really signed this? Martine said. She stood before the poster, her arms folded. I mean, it could have been forged by a dealer or something along the line. During Shelton's lifetime, maybe even after. The letter of authentication, Victor reminded her. Yeah, that's right. Ray gave us the letter that goes with it. But suppose the letter was a forgery. What we need is another letter certifying the first letter is authentic. And laughing, she walked away from the poster. Ultimately, we would have to have Gilbert Shelton here personally to testify that he signed it. Well, maybe he wouldn't know. That's the story about the man bringing Picasso picture to Picasso and asking him if it was authentic. Picasso immediately signed it and said, now it's authentic. It's genuine. Ray wouldn't give us a forgery. He's a leading expert on counterculture art of the 20th century. You know he signs an actual lid of dope. It's preserved under... Ray is... dead, Martine. What? She gazed at him, astonishment. You mean something happened to him? He's been dead for 2 years. I was responsible. I was driving the car. I wasn't cited by the police, but it was my fault. Ray is living on Mars. I know I was responsible. I never told you. I never told anyone. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I saw it flapping against the window. Dorky was trying to reach it, and I lifted Dorky up. and I don't know why, but Dorky grabbed it. Sit down, Victor. Martini led him to the overstuffed chair and made him seat himself. Something's wrong. I know. Something's terribly wrong. I'm responsible for the taking of a life. A precious life that could never be replaced. I'm sorry, I wish I could make it okay, but I just can't. Just call Ray. The cat. What cat? There, in the poster, on Fat Freddy's lap. That's Dorky. Dorky killed Ray. The presence told me. It was God. I didn't realize it at the time, but God saw me commit the crime, the murder. He'll never forgive me. His wife stared at him numbly. God sees everything you do. He sees the falling sparrow. Only in this case, it didn't fall. It was just grabbed out of the air and torn apart. God's tearing this house down, which is my body, to pay me back for what I've done. We should have had a building contractor look at this house before we bought it. It's just falling to pieces. In a year, there won't be anything left. Martine faltered. Watch. Kimmings reached up his arms toward the ceiling. He stood and he reached. He could not touch the ceiling. He walked to the wall, and then after a pause, put his hands through the wall. Martine screamed. The ship aborted the fantasy. He has integrated his early fears and guilt into an interwoven grid. There's no way I can serve up a pleasant memory to him because he instantly contaminates it. However pleasant the original experience in itself was. This is a serious situation. The man is already showing signs of psychosis, and we're hardly into the trip. After allowing itself to think the situation through, the ship decided to contact Victor Kimmings once more. Hey, Mr. Kimmings. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to foul up these retrievals. You did a good job, but Just a moment. I'm not equipped to do psychiatric reconstruction of you. I am a simple mechanism, and that is all. What is it you want? Where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? I want to arrive at our final destination, okay? I just want this trip to be over. Ah, the ship thought. That is the solution. One by one, the cryonic system shut down. One by one, the people returned to life, among them Victor Kimmings. What amazed him was the lack of sense of passage of time. He had entered the chamber, lain down, felt the membrane cover him, and the temperature begin to drop, and now he stood on the ship's external platform, the unloading platform, gazing down at the verdant planetary landscapes. This he realized as the LR-46, the colony world to which he had come in order to begin a new life. Looks good, a woman beside him said. Yeah, he said, and felt the newness of the landscape rush up at him, his promise of a new beginning, something better than what he had known in his past, and he felt glad. And colors raced at him, like those of a child's semi-animated kid. St. Elmo's fire. That's right. There's a great deal of ionization in this planet's atmosphere. A free light show, such as they had back in the 20th century. Mr. Kimmings, a voice said, an elderly man coming up beside him. Speak to him. Did you dream, son? In suspension. No. Not that I can remember. I think I dreamt. Would you take my arm? Down the descent ramp, I feel unsteady. The air seems thin. Do you find it thin? Don't be afraid, Kimming said to him. He took the elderly man's arm. I'll help you down the ramp. If there's a guide coming this way, he'll arrange our processing for us. It's part of the package. We'll be taken to the resort hotel, given first-class accommodations. Read your brochure. He smiled at the unsteady older man to reassure him. You think our muscles would be nothing but flab after 10 years in suspension? It's just like freezing peas, Kimming said. Holding on to the timid older man, he descended the ramp to the ground. You can store them forever. You can get them cold enough. My name's Shelton, son. What? Kimmings halted. A strange feeling moved through him. Don Shelton. The elderly man extended his hand. Reflexively, Kimmings accepted it, and they shook. What's the matter, Mr. Kimmings? Are you alright? Sure. I'm fine, I'm just hungry. I'd like to get something to eat. I'd like to go to our hotel where I can take a shower and change my clothes. And he wondered where their baggage could be found. Probably it would take the ship an hour to unload it. The ship was not particularly intelligent after all. In an intimate, confidential tone, elderly Mr. Shelton said, You know what I brought with me? A bottle of wild Kentucky bourbon. Finest bourbon on earth. I'll bring it over to our hotel room. We'll share it. He nudged at Kimmings. I don't drink. Oh, only wine. And he wondered if there were any good wines here in the distant colony world. Not distant now, he reflected. It is Earth that's distant. He should have done like Mr. Shelton had, brought a few bottles with him. Shelton. What did that name remind him of? Something in his past, early years, something precious. Something that goes with good wine and a pretty, gentle woman, making crepes in an old-fashioned house. Aching memories. Memories that hurt. And presently, he stood by the bed in his hotel room, his suitcase open. He began to hang up his clothes. In the corner of the room, a TV hologram showed a newscaster. He ignored it. But liking the sound of a human voice, he kept it on. Did I have any dreams? Or in these past 10 years? His hand hurt. And gazing down, he saw a red welt. As if he'd been stung. A bee stung him, he realized. When? How? While I lay in cryonic suspension? That's impossible. Yet, he could see the welt. He could feel the pain. I better get something put on it, he realized. There's undoubtedly a robot doctor in this hotel. It's a first-rate hotel. When the robot doctor had arrived, he was treating the bee sting. Kimmings said, You see this here? I got this as a punishment for killing the bird. Really? The robot doctor said. Everything that ever meant anything to me has been taken away from me. Martine, the poster, my little old house, the wine cellar. We had everything and now it's gone. Martine left me because of that bird. The bird you killed, the robot doctor said. God punished me. He took away all that was precious to me because of my sin. It wasn't Dorky, Doc. It was me. But you were just a little boy, the robot doctor said. How did you know that? He pulled his hand away from the robot doctor's grasp. Something's wrong. You shouldn't have known that. Your mother told me, the robot doctor said. My mother didn't know. She figured it out. I mean, there's no way the cat could have reached the bird without your help. So all that time, I was growing up, she knew. She never said anything. You can forget about it, the robot doctor said. Mr. Robot Doctor, I don't think you exist. There's no possible way that you can know these things. I'm still in cryonic suspension, and the ship is feeding me my own buried memories. So I won't become psychotic from simple deprivation or something. You could hardly have a memory of completing the trip, sir. Wish fulfillment, then. It's the same thing. I'll prove it to you. Do you have a screwdriver? Why? I'll remove the back of the TV set, and you'll see. There's nothing inside it. No components, no parts, no chassis, nothing. I don't have a screwdriver. A small knife, then. You can see it in your surgical supply bag. Bending, Kimmings lifted a small scalpel. This'll do. I'll show you. Will you believe me? If there's nothing inside the TV cabinet... Squatting down, Mr. Kimmings removed the screws, holding a black panel of the TV set in place. The panel came loose, and he set it down on the floor. There was nothing inside the TV cabinet, yet the color hologram continued to fill a quarter of the hotel room, and the voice of the newscaster issued forth this three-dimensional image. Admit it. You're the ship. Oh dear, the ship said to itself. I've got almost 10 years of this lying ahead of me. He is a hopelessly contaminating person with every single experience I can think of. He imagines his wife left him because when he was 4 years old, he helped a cat catch a bird. The only solution would be for Martine to return to him. But how am I going to arrange that? She may not still be alive. On the other hand, maybe she is. Maybe she could be induced to do something to save her former husband's sanity. People by and large have very positive traits. And 10 years from now, it will take a lot to save, or rather restore, his sanity. It will take something drastic, something I myself cannot do alone. Meanwhile, there was nothing to be done but recycle the wish-fulfillment arrival of the ship at its destination. I will run him through the arrival, then wipe his conscious memory clean and run him through it again. The only positive aspect of this is that it will give me something to do, which may help preserve my sanity. Lying in cryonic suspension, faulty cryonic suspension, Victor Kimmings imagined once again that the ship was touching down. He was being brought back to consciousness. Did you dream? A woman asked him as the group of passengers gathered on the outer platform. I had the impression that I dreamed early scenes from my life, over a century ago. I can't remember anything, Kimmings said. He was eager to reach a hotel, a shower, change of clothes. It would do him wonders for his morale. Felt slightly depressed and wondered why. There's our guide. They're going to escort us to our accommodations. It's in the package, right? Kimmings said. His depression remained. The others seemed so spirited, so full of life. But over him only a weariness lay, weighing down the sensation, as if the gravity of the colony planet were too much for him. Maybe that's it, he said to himself. But according to the brochures, the gravity matched Earth's. There was only one of the attractions. Puzzled, he made his way slowly down the ramp, step by step, holding onto the rail. I don't really deserve a new chance at life anyhow. I was going through the motions. I'm not like all these other people. There's something wrong with me. I can't remember what it is, but nonetheless, it is there. Bitter sense. Lack of worth. An insect landed on the back of Kimmings' right hand. Weary with flight, and he halted, watching it crawl across his knuckles. I can crush it. So obviously infirm, it won't live much longer anyhow. And he crushed it, when a great inner horror came. What have I done? My first moment here, and I've wiped out a little life. Is this my new beginning? And turning, he gazed back to the ship. Maybe I ought to go back. Have them freeze me forever. I'm a man of guilt, a man who destroys. And within its sentient works, the interstellar ship moaned. During the 10 long years remaining in the trip to the LR4 system, the ship had plenty of time to track down Marlene Kimmings. It explained the situation to her. He had immigrated to a vast orbiting dome in the Sirius system, found her situation unsatisfactory, and was en route back to Earth. Roused from her own cryonic suspension, she listened intently and then agreed to be at the colony world, LR46, when her ex-husband arrived, if it was at all possible. Fortunately, it was. I don't think he'll recognize me. I've allowed myself to age. I don't really approve of entirely halting the aging process, you see. He'll be lucky if he recognizes anything, the ship thought. At the inter-system spaceport on the colony world of LR46, Martine stood waiting for the people aboard the ship to appear on the other platform. She wondered if she would recognize her former husband. She was a little afraid, but she was glad that she had gotten the LR46 in time. It had been close. Another week, and his ship would have arrived before hers. Luck is on her side. Scrutinized the newly landed interstellar ship. People appeared on the platform. She saw him. Victor had changed very little. He came down the ramp, holding onto the railing as if weary and hesitant. She came up to him, her hands thrust deep in the pockets of her coat. She felt shy, and when she spoke she could hardly hear her own voice. "Hi, Victor," she managed to say. He halted and gazed at her. "I know you. It's Martine." Holding out his hand, he said nothing. "I guess you heard about the trouble on the ship." "Yes, the ship contacted me. What an ordeal." "Yeah. Recirculating memories forever. Did I ever tell you about the bee I was trying to extricate from a spider's web when I was 4 years old? The idiotic bee stung me. It's good to see you. Did the ship? It said it would try to have me here. I wasn't sure if you could make it." They walked towards the terminal building. Martine said, "I was lucky. I managed to get a transfer to a military vessel, high-velocity ship, just shot along like a mad thing. A new propulsion system entirely. I have spent more time in my own unconscious mind than any other human in history. Worse than the early 20th century psychoanalysis. The same material over and over again. Did you know that I'm scared of my mother?" "I was scared of your mother." And they stood at the baggage depot waiting for the luggage to appear. "This looks like a nice little planet. Much better than where I was. I haven't been happy at all." "Yeah, so maybe there's a cosmic plan." She surveyed him. He has a hurt in his eyes. Maybe it was the cryonic malfunction, she said to herself. I could see it in his eyes. They looked broken eyes, torn down into pieces by fatigue and defeat. And his buried early memories swam up and destroyed him. But it's over, she thought. And I did get here in time. At the bar in the terminal building, they sat holding a drink. This man got me to try a wild turkey bourbon. It is amazing bourbon. He says it's the best on earth. Brought a bottle with him from him. His voice died into silence. One of your fellow passengers? I guess so. Well, you can stop thinking of the birds and the bees, Martine said. Being stung by a bee, helping a cat catch a bird. That's all past, huh? That cat. That cat's been dead 182 years. I figured it out while they were freeing us out of suspension. Probably just as well. Dorky the killer cat. Nothing like Fat Freddy's cat, huh? I had to sell that poster, by the way. Finally. And he frowned. Remember? You let me have it. Which I always thought was really good of you. Well, how much did you get for it? A lot. I should pay you something like... Taking inflation into account, I should pay you about $2 million. Instead, in place of the money, would you consider spending some time with me until I get used to this planet? I mean, yes. And she meant it very much. They finished their drinks and then with the luggage transported by a robot space cab, made their way to his hotel room. This is a nice room. It has a hologram TV. Turn it on. There's no use turning it on, Victor Kimming said. He stood by the open closet, hanging up the shirts. Why not? There's nothing on it. And going over to the TV set, Martine turned it on. A hockey game materialized, projected out into the room in full color. The sound of the game assailed her ears. It works fine. I know. But I can prove it to you. If you have a nail file or something, I'll unscrew the back plate and show you. But I can... Look at this. He paused his work of hanging up his clothes. See my hand? Watch me put my hand through this wall. He placed the palm of his right hand against the wall. And the foundation, it's rotting away. Come and sit down with me, Martine said. I've lived this often enough now. I've lived this over and over again. I come out of suspension. I walk down the ramp. I get my luggage. Sometimes I have a drink at the bar, and sometimes I come directly to my room. Usually I turn on the TV. See? This is where the bee stung me. She saw no mark on his hands. She took his hands and held it. There's no bee sting. And when the robot doctor comes, I borrow from him and take off the back plate of the TV set. To prove to him that it's not a chassis, there's no components in it. And then the ship starts me over again. Victor, look at your hand. This is the first time you've been here, though. Sit down. Okay. He seated himself on the bed beside her, but not too close to her. Why don't you sit closer? It makes me too sad remembering you. Martine said, I will sit with you until it's real for you. I think I'm going to try reliving the part with the cat. And this time not pick up the cat. Not let it get the bird. If I do that, maybe my life will change so that it turns into something happy. Something that's real. My real mistake was separating from you, though. Here. I'll put my hand right through you, just watch. See? It goes right through you. And all this because you killed a bird when you were a little boy. No. All this because of a failure in the temperature regulating assembly aboard the ship. I'm not down to the proper temperature. There's just enough warmth left in my brain cells to permit cerebral activity. Do you want to have dinner? I'm sorry, I'm not hungry. I am. I'm going to have some of the local seafood. The brochure says it's terrific. Come along. Maybe when you see the food and smell it, you'll change your mind. And gathering up her coat and purse, she came with him. This is a beautiful little planet. I've explored it dozens of times. I know it thoroughly. We should stop downstairs at the pharmacy for some Bactine, though. My hand, it's getting to swell. It hurts. It hurts more now than ever before. And the poster is torn, Victor Kimming said. What? We should have framed it. We didn't have sense enough to take care of it. Now it's torn, and the artist is dead.